Joseph Alois Schumpeter was born February 8, 1883 in Moravia, now known as the Czech Republic, and died January 8, 1950 in Connecticut, US. He's a Moravian-born American economist and sociologist known for his theories on capitalist development and business cycles mostly. Born in Austria to parents who owned a textile factory, Schumpeter was very familiar with business when he entered the University of Vienna to study economics and law. He was one of the more promising students of Friedrich von Weiser and Eugene von Bomberg, publishing at the age of 28 his famous The Theory of Economic Development. In 1911, Schumpeter took a professorship in economics at the University of Graz. To his surprise, he was asked by Social Democrats in 1919, 8 years later, to become finance minister in a coalition government. He accepted, and it had seemed that he had reached one of his most desired goals. This, however, was short-lived after he was forced to resign a little more than a year and a half later. With the rise of Hitler at the time, he left Europe and the university where he was a professor until 1932 and emigrated to the United States, where he would later meet his wife. In that same year of 1932, he accepted a permanent position at Harvard where he remained until his retirement in 1949, a year before he died. In 1948, the year before, he was also made president of the American Economic Association. Schumpeter was a great giant in the history of economic thought. One of his great works, The History of Economic Analysis, which was edited by his third wife Elizabeth Boody and published in 1954. In this, he made some very controversial comments about other economists. He stated that Adam Smith was unoriginal, Leon Walras was one of the greatest economists of all time, if not the greatest, and Alfred Marshall was merely confused. His influence in the field of economic theory was powerful. In his widely read Capitalism, Socialism, and Democracy, which we now will discuss, he argued that capitalism would eventually perish of its own success and give way to some form of socialism. His History of Economic Analysis, which he wrote in 1954, was stated to be an exhaustive study of the development of analytic methods in economics. Some of his other books include The Theory of Economic Development, Business Cycles, and the one which we are about to discuss. His book was published in 1942. In this book, he speaks about economics, sociology, and history. It is arguably one of the most famous and debated important books of his, and also in terms of social theory, social sciences, and economics at large. In this book, he deals with capitalism, socialism, and a concept called creative destruction. Creative destruction, which he derived from Karl Marx, is the innovation mechanism by which new products can replace old ones. He describes this as the essential fact about capitalism. First published in 1942, it is largely unmathematical compared with neoclassical works. It focuses on unexpected rapid spurts of entrepreneur-driven growth instead of static models. In this book, he defends capitalism mostly on the grounds of entrepreneurship. Indeed, he is assumed to be one of the first to lay a clear concept of entrepreneurship. He distinguished inventions from the entrepreneur's innovations and pointed out that entrepreneurs innovate not merely by figuring out how to use inventions, but also by introducing new means of production, new products, and new forms of organization. These innovations, he argued, take just as much skill and are just as daring as the process of innovation is. We will now go into a few of the important parts of the book, which form most of the argument that is mostly discussed by scholars in this book of Joseph Schumpeter. So the first part is, can capitalism survive? He answers no in the prologue to this section in the book. He gives an example and says, if a doctor predicts that his patient will die presently, this does not mean that he desires it. In this section, he reaches that conclusion through discussing notions of the rate of increase of total output, plausible capitalism, the process of creative destruction, monopolistic practices, closed season, the vanishing of investment opportunity, the civilization of capitalism, crumbling walls, growing hostility, and decomposition. Of these, creative destruction, as we discussed earlier, has been absorbed into standard economic theory. In this section, he constructs a view of capitalism which ultimately tends toward corporatism, which he suggests will be its own undoing. Schumpeter believed that capitalism will indeed be destroyed not by its failure, but by its successes. He believed that it would spawn a large intellectual class that made its living by attacking the very bourgeois system of private property and freedom, which was so necessary for the intellectual class's existence. This, however, doesn't necessarily mean that he was a Marxist. Actually, Schumpeter did not relish at the fact that capitalism will eventually come to a downfall as he had perceived. The next part that we will discuss is, can socialism work? In this section, comparative analysis of known theories of socialism are explored. He does this through 5 sections in this part, which are clear index, the socialist blueprint, comparison of blueprints, the human element, and transition. Schumpeter stated that this book only came into existence after 40 years of the study of socialism. To summarize this part, in Schumpeter's view, socialism will ensure that production of goods and services is directed towards meeting the authentic needs of the people of Hungary or society at the time, and will overcome some innate tendencies of capitalism, such as conjuncture fluctuation, unemployment, and the waning acceptance of the system. From this part, we will come to socialism and democracy. Schumpeter is best known for advocating a procedural definition of democracy. In this section, he debates how well democracies and societies and socialism will fit together. 4 sections in this part of the book include the setting of the problem, the classical doctrine of a democracy, another theory of democracy, and the inference. One of the most important arguments he makes in this part of the book is the criticizing of the implications of 18th century philosophy of democracy, which is that the democratic method is that the institutional arrangement for arriving at political decisions which realizes the common good by making the people itself decide issues through election of individuals who are to assemble in order to carry its will. This definition assumes that there is no common good that we all agree on, that there is a known common good that we all agree on, which defines good and bad, and that the only issue and the only problem is how quickly to move this ideal. Schumpeter, however, believes that there is no common good that we can all be brought to through a rational argument, even if there are those who have good intentions for what is best for society. Schumpeter's theory is that the success of capitalism will lead to a form of corporatism, as we said earlier, and a fostering of values that are hostile to capitalism, especially among intellectuals and elites. The intellectual and social climate needed to allow the type of entrepreneurship he describes, he believes will not thrive in an advanced capitalism, but will be replaced by socialism in some form. He believes there will not be a revolution, but there will just grow a trend for social democratic parties to be elected to parliament as part of a democratic process. He argues that capitalism will collapse from within, within which will come about when majorities vote for creation of a welfare state and place restrictions on entrepreneurs that will burden and eventually destroy the capitalist structure. He emphasizes throughout his book that he's analyzing trends and not engaging in political advocacy. But with any economist, there are always critics. Critics that he faced sometimes are that his intention in Socialism and Democracy as a book is actually single-minded and focused on one question, which is, under what conditions can creative and effective leadership emerge in political and economic systems? Critics believe that for this reason, his discussion of socialism versus capitalism completely ignores the traditional terms of the debate, which are centered around morality of private property, feasibility of state planning, and the role of the market versus planning. And if rather, he evaluates the survivability of systems solely on the basis of their ability to generate competent and innovative entrepreneurship. Schumpeter also defends political democracy not merely on traditional grounds of protecting liberty and generating decisions reflecting general will, but rather only on its capacity to generate competent and creative political leadership. Critics also believe that he has a faulty theory of social leadership, and while he does correctly emphasize contribution of personal qualities of leaders to their performance, things such as integrity, intelligence, managerial ability, etc., they believe he virtually ignores the equally important contribution of the structures of external accountability to which leaders are subjected. The last critique I will speak about is that, according to some analysts, they believe that Schumpeter's theories of transition of capitalism into socialism were just not 100% correct. They believe that he didn't anticipate the obvious failure of socialism in Eastern Europe or the role that technology will have in fostering innovation and entrepreneurship in Western society. Of course, this is what happened in the beginning of the 1980s. They believe this was in contrast to his theory that technology would only serve to concentrate ownership and wealth towards large corporations. This brings our presentation to an end. If there are any questions and comments, you can contact me. Anyway, thank you.